I recently did a video about por and para. In that video I said that one of the English translations for por is because of something. Here's some examples of that usage. Juan perdió su trabajo por su adicción. Juan lost his job because of his addiction. Por su adicción, because of his addiction. Decidimos quedarnos en casa por la lluvia. We decided to stay home because of the rain. Well, that video prompted a few viewers to ask me how they know when to use porque for because and when to just use por. It's actually a great question and one that I get a lot because it causes a lot of confusion for a lot of folks learning Spanish. So I'm going to break it down in this video. Por is your choice when English says because of and it's followed by a noun. So right on your word list, just put por plus noun. And I gave you two examples of that already. Remember those? Juan perdió su trabajo por su adicción and decidimos quedarnos en casa por la lluvia. So we have por and then we're dropping in a noun. This is the most common way that you're going to be using por. It's just dropping in a noun. At least it's the most common way I use it. And there's a lot of great expressions that follow this pattern that are worth adding to your word list. One of them is por necesidad, out of necessity. Lo aprendí por necesidad. I learned it out of necessity. Or aprendí a hablar español por necesidad. I learned how to speak Spanish out of necessity. Another one I really like is por mi cuenta, on my own. Or if you're talking about somebody else, por su cuenta, on their own. Or tú, por tu cuenta. Same thing, you can pop it in the sentence I just had. Aprendí a hablar español por mi cuenta. I learned how to speak Spanish on my own. María aprendió a hablar español por su cuenta. Maria learned how to speak Spanish on her own. Por is also your choice when the English says because of, and it's followed by the present progressive. Those are those verbs with the ing endings. Like because of arriving early, because of losing his job. In Spanish, we're just going to be using por, and we're going to be dropping in the infinitive. Because I know some of you may be thinking, okay, Paul, I learned that the ing endings in Spanish were like yendo. So I take comer and I put yendo and it becomes comiendo, eating. That's what I learned, Paul. So what is this? Now, I just like to respond that you're absolutely correct. That is how you make the Spanish gerund. You know, with ER and IR verbs, you're going to put that yendo, comiendo. With AR verbs, ando generally, caminar, caminando. That is true. But here's what's different about this and what you have to keep in mind. That the Spanish gerund is not used in all the places where you're going to see that ing ending in English. And one of the big ones is it's not used after a preposition. Spanish will use the infinitive or the unconjugated verb and then just drop it in. Take a look at that word por. You know what that is? It's a preposition, folks, so we're just going to be dropping in infinitives. So our formula becomes por plus infinitive. They fired him for arriving late. Lo despidieron por llegar tarde. See, we have for arriving late in the English, but we have por llegar tarde. Why? Because we can't have the Spanish gerund after a preposition. So it's por plus infinitive. One thing I want to point out before I move on is that verb there. Despidieron, right? They fired him. Lo despidieron. Some of you might have been thinking, I thought despedir meant to say goodbye. And I know some other ones are probably like, I didn't know what it meant to begin with, Paul, just saying. So this is one of those examples where you have a verb, despedir, and then you have the pronominal form of the verb, despedirse, and pronominals are just the ones that end in se, you know, when they're attached to the infinitive. So two forms of this verb, and they have different meanings. So despedir by itself can mean to fire someone. It has some other meanings, but I don't want to confuse you. To fire someone. And despedirse means to say goodbye to. But before you just add despedirse on your word list just like that, you need to add the little preposition de after it. I tell you this all the time when you're learning Spanish verbs, learn the preposition that goes with it, especially if it's a preposition you did not anticipate. So despedirse de means to say goodbye to someone. María se despidió de nosotros. Maria said goodbye to us. Now, if you forgot that de, it doesn't make sense. So you have to put it. So just to be clear here, the de part is the to someone. You're saying goodbye to them. If you're not saying I say goodbye to someone, then despedirse would be your choice. For example, we said goodbye to each other. nos despedimos. That's it. But if I want to say, we say goodbye to Maria, nos despedimos de Maria. Let's get back on track here. We were talking about por plus infinitive in this type of usage. Here are a couple more examples just to kind of solidify it in your head. They congratulated her for winning the award. La felicitaron por ganar el premio. We thank you for helping us. Te agradecemos por ayudarnos. See how that's working now? All right. Let's go ahead and move on to porque. It also means because, and it should be easy to remember because it has por right in there, right? It's right there. We use porque when responding to the question why something was done. And we usually stick it right in the front of our sentence. ¿Por qué estudias español todos los días? Why do you study Spanish every day? And I just have to point out that that's a different porque. When porque is all together, it means because, and when you separate it out and put an accent on the E, it means why. So our question was, ¿por qué estudias español todos los días? Why do you study Spanish every day? Porque quiero hablar español como si hubiera nacido en México. Because I want to speak Spanish as if I was born in Mexico. See? ¿Por qué? Because. Oye, ¿por qué te quedaste en casa hoy? Hey, why did you stay home today? Porque no tenía ganas de hacer nada. Because I didn't feel like doing anything. That's a good one for your word list too, folks. Tener ganas de plus infinitive, to feel like doing something. And if you don't feel like doing something, you just pop a little no in there, right? No tener ganas de plus infinitive, to not feel like doing something. Back to porque. Porque is also used as a connector between two clauses. The why something was done. And that reason, that separate clause, is like a separate sentence. It could be a separate sentence. You're going to see a conjugated verb there. Tuvimos que vender nuestra casa porque perdí mi trabajo. We had to sell our house because I lost my job. See, those are two clauses. Without the porque, those are sentences, right? We had to sell our house. Why? I lost my job. That's another sentence. So porque is our connector between these two sentences. We call them clauses because we didn't stick periods on them, that's all. In that example, we actually had two different subjects for our clauses, but you could have the same subject. Here's an example in English. Take a look at this. I was fired because I was late for work on several occasions. These are two clauses that could be complete sentences, right? I was fired. That's a complete sentence. I was late for work on several occasions. Complete sentence. So porque is our connector. We're going to stick it right in there. I was fired. Fui despedido. I was fired. Now, if you're not familiar with that, that's actually using ser plus the past participle. This is actually pretty common when you're fired to use this construction or the other one if you want to say they fired you. But if you just want to say I was fired, this is pretty common. So we have I was fired, fui despedido, because, porque, and our second clause, llegué tarde a trabajo en varias ocasiones. See what I'm doing here? Porque. In English, we could have actually phrased that sentence a little bit differently because it only had one subject. We could have said something like, I was fired for arriving late to work on several occasions. So I'm going to draw your attention right to the middle there. What do we have there? For arriving late. And what does that trigger? Por plus infinitive. Fui despedido por llegar tarde a trabajo en varias ocasiones. What do you think? You got it now? You got this whole porque and por thing? I hope so. Well, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And I think that's about it. So until next time, hasta luego. Oh, and I know that whole drawn out hasta luego drives some people nuts, folks. But, well, I'm kind of used to it now. So I think I'm going to stick with it.